Hey guys, so today's video is going to be a little bit of a follow-up. So a bit ago I did a video about Australia wanting to ban social media for children. And at the time, I still hold this opinion now, but at the time I was really like, no, this doesn't make a lot of sense because it's so easy to circumvent a lot of stuff and children know how to circumvent certain things. I don't think banning social media is really the play to go, especially with how integrated it is nowadays with how different stuff. I mean, you get brand deals if you get big enough on Instagram or if you're big enough on YouTube or whatever. So besides all that, that's what I was talking about in that video. And so it turns out that they actually decided to, well, ban social media for children, particularly under 16, which would constitute as a minor. And so I wanted to look at, well, roughly what it was talking about, because there's a lot of stuff inside of this ban that's a little bit strange to me, and a lot of it I feel like isn't really going to be very helpful in the future, because especially when it comes to stuff like, well, privacy, I really believe that a ban like this could also push more forward into, edging into other territory where it's like, oh, we're just trying to protect the kids, but protecting the kids doesn't really ends up becoming something where it's just like a shield for other nefarious stuff. Well, maybe not nefarious, but just other ways to just monitor people. Because to be honest with y'all, I am somebody who will always value anonymity and privacy, just because, like, I don't think it's really healthy to have people being monitored 24/7, and it leaves them more prone to stuff that really I'm not really in favor of. But anyways, I want to take a look at, well, let's take a look at it and see what we got here. So at the top here, I have the NSFW. Not NSFW, the NSW government welcomes the federal government's ban on social media for children under 16. All right, so the Online Safety Amendment Social Media Minimum Age Bill 2024 passed both houses of parliament this week. The laws place the onus on social media platforms, not young people or their parents, to take reasonable steps to prevent Australians under 16 years of age from having accounts, and ensures systematic breaches will see platforms face fines of up to $49.5 million. The minimum age will apply to age-restricted social media platforms as defined in the bill, which includes Snapchat, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and others. The Min's Labour program is pleased that we have a national approach to social media bans. It means we have consistent rules across the country. This follows the joint social media summit held by the NSW government and the government of South Australia, the first of its kind. The summit in Sydney reached consensus that social media, if left unchecked, uncensored, unsupervised, poses a threat, particularly to young people in our community. Evidence shows us the links between increases in social media use and the greater instances of mental health issues, loss of sleep, less in-person interaction, and less practice of social skills. So, a bit of a mouthful on that one, but we'll talk about it soon. The social media ban is a welcome measure for many parents and another of the many measures now in place to help minimize the negative impacts of social media and devices on young people, including banning mobile phones in all NSW public schools in a recent survey showing that 86% of principals believing socializing has improved since this came into effect. Developing a statewide approach to address bullying in New South Wales schools, a $2.5 million research fund to investigate the impacts of excessive screen time, video games, and mobile phone use on young people and their learning, recruiting 250 additional school counselors as part of the NSW Labour government's election commitment to students' well-being. So, that was a mouthful. Whew! Even for me. And so, the general gist of it is that they believe that banning social media will lead to, increases of, socialization and people, not being as ostracized and all that fun stuff, and people being, kept away from certain danger. And so my question, first of all, is exactly what would qualify as what would qualify just like age-restricted media platforms? Is this stuff like adult websites? Is this stuff just like social media? It says social media in particular. What else falls under that? Because think about this, all right? Imagine you're on YouTube and then you end up running into age-restricted content, which really is kind of, well, in my experience, it's a bit rare to run into that kind of stuff because, well, age-restricted stuff is already so boxed in and all that. And so what if you run into that and you have to make an account? How does YouTube verify that? I'm not entirely sure, to be honest, but I believe that if it shows that your account is if you were born within a certain time, even though you can lie about it, it'll say okay, you can't do that. And I know for what should we call it? I believe for some particular like adult sites, if you have to pay for content, you have to like go and verify that you are 18. Because on those websites, if you log in right now, and I guarantee you, if you log in right now, it'll ask you, "Are you 18 years of age?" You will say yes. Okay, because if you're not, then it'll literally redirect you out. But of course, when you get to that screen, it doesn't verify you to look at the content, but to buy it, it's a whole different story. Is what it is. So those are just measures so that, you know, in case a lawsuit comes in, you could say, well, did the person click on the website before they got in? So that is what it is. But we will talk about it very soon. I do want to look at actually Australia's Privacy Act because I'm a little bit more interested in that aspect because I want to see what exactly constitutes that. So let's take a look real quick. So here I have the Privacy Act. So it says here the Privacy Act of 1988 was introduced to promote and protect the privacy of individuals to regulate how Australian government agencies and organizations with an annual turnover of more than $3 million and some other organizations handle personal information. So the Privacy Act includes 13 Australian principles, which apply to some private sector organizations as well as most Australian government agencies. Such organizations and agencies are collectively known as APP entities. The Privacy Act also regulates the privacy component of the Consumer Credit Reporting System, tax file numbers, health, and medical research. And so now we have an idea what this act covers, but I do have a bit of a summary for y'all. So if you follow me here, it says here that, so there are 13 Australian privacy principles and they govern standards, rights, obligations around the collection, use, and disclose of personal information, which is arguably the most important part. So an organization or agency's governance and accountability, integrity and correction of personal information, the rights of individuals to access their personal information, and the Australian privacy principles are principles-based law. This gives an organization or agency flexibility to tailor their personal information handling practices to their business models and diverse needs of individuals. They are also technology neutral, which allows them to adapt to changing technology. A breach to an Australian privacy principle is an interference with the privacy of an individual and can lead to regulatory action and penalties. So, getting a full picture of what we have here, from our understanding, so it's basically saying, and now I'm not a lawyer, so I will read this again, but it's saying that you can actually, how you get somebody's information is actually very flexible. So technically, in the Privacy Acts of Australia, you also have people, like to my best of my understanding, you have people like you could also, this bill doesn't really isn't really under like integrity. That's the word I'm looking for. It's not really it's not really conflicting with this whole act. So this law, in the terms of like with Australia, actually says, well, yeah, you can actually do that. And like my question is, how are they going to verify if somebody's under 16 or not, or 16 under? Because to me, once a website starts asking you for, you know, ID, that's where stuff gets a little bit murky. Because say, for example, I want to go buy cigarettes, okay? That is a person who I have to give my ID. They look at me. They look at like when I was born. They look at the picture. They'll look at me and they say, okay, you match your picture. You know, you look good enough. I can give you the cigarettes. But when it comes to something like I want to log into Instagram, it's a bit weirder because now you have to give, you know, your driver's license, we'll stick with driver's license, to a database. And the database is going to be like, okay, well, you look the same. You know, I took a picture. You take a picture. You verify your ID. You know, and said you look the same. Guess what happens? You can use our website. So once you start getting into that territory, I'm a bit less, you know, enthusiastic because now you have people being like, you know, it's kind of like dystopian future-esque because eventually all the anonymity and all of the, you know, I guess freedom that you have is a bit taken away. And imagine like you have a tweet from like 5 years ago and somebody looks at this at your job and it's like, okay, you said this 5 years ago, so we're not going to hire you. Like, you see how it could be bad? And even like nefarious people could also take advantage of the system. So I just find that there's so much wrong with this. But to give some bit of a counterbalance, let's look at how like some other countries do it. So what I ended up looking up is I was just looking for different countries who have laws like this. So I looked at actually France in particular. And unfortunately, well, I could translate it for you guys. I just used Google Translate to translate what they were talking about because I wasn't trying to sit here and translate a whole phrase. But here's the part I want to look at. So it says here, after Article 6.5 of the Law 2004-575 of June 21st, 2004, and Article 6.7 it starts as follows. The providers of online social network services operating in France, refuse deregistration to their services of minors of 15 years unless the authorization of this registration is given by one of the holders of parental authority over the minor, which is what I want to look at. So essentially, if you're at a certain age, in France, your parent has to basically sign it for you, which arguably is a way better system than just banning it across the board. Because at least you're going through. It's on the onus of the parents to get that done or to monitor their child. So there's some accountability there. But another thing that I looked at was exactly like, could Australia implement something like in the UK? And so in the UK, for instance, it says here that there are exactly 5 ways companies can verify users' age. So allows banks to confirm a user is over 18, allowing mobile providers to confirm a user is an adult. Credit card checks. Credit card holders in the UK need to be over 18. The website can check with the issuer that the card is valid. Asking site users to upload a photo that is then matched with photo ID. Use of facial age estimation technology. So while this is a little bit better, to me, I'm just not the biggest fan of it still, just because you're essentially putting your face into a database, which is like, in case of like some company, it's like, it's just off, But anyways, so essentially that's the dilemma that Australia has itself in, which is interesting, but there's something I really want to like go over, and this is the part that like I really want to hammer home. And so just to give like my overall thoughts about this, I just find that when it comes to a lot of stuff in this world nowadays, I mean, I know social media has changed even since I was a kid and growing to adulthood now. Like, there's been so many changes to it and how you can market yourself. But the gist of it is that I find that, to be honest with y'all, this is more something that parents should be taking over rather than the government. And the reason why I say this is because there's a lot of stuff out there that, is very harmful to children, because there's stuff like alcohol that is legal and you still need to be a certain age. You have cigarettes. You have, what else is legal? Like, where I live, like weed is illegal. Okay, and every different type of drugs are legal. Hell, even over-the-counter like prescriptions are, well, obviously legal because they're prescriptions, but it is what it is. And so, how do you like keep people away from that? And to me, personally, there's 2 paths you can go down. Okay. You could shut it out completely, which is really not a good idea. Or 2, you can kind of not just educate, but you have to be a bit more like active in it. Because I find that, at least with a lot of parents nowadays, and this is very anecdotal, so maybe I'm wrong, but I find that especially when parents are like tired of children, they'll just like give them a tablet and just go away, which is a little bit scary, because when you do that, you're giving them unrestricted access, and even stuff like parental controls can be circumvented. But to me, parents need to take a very active role in how and what their children are engaging with, because if that is not happening, then you have cases where people will end up, looking at the stuff they shouldn't be looking into. And so that's really what it is. And on top of that, when it comes to schools as well, we need to really, really educate people on how this stuff really works, because once you educate somebody, the onus, that's not a word, but the responsibility is on the individual whether they want to do it or not. Because think about it this way, we've known for years cigarettes are not good. There's statistical data that tells us cigarettes are not good. There's so much stuff. There's stuff that says alcohol is not healthy for you, is not good for your liver. But guess what? People still do it anyway. But at least you can say that people were educated enough in order to do that, to the point where, guess what? Now we can say, it's on them, because we do have to give people some agency here. It's not just entirely, on one party or another. But when it comes to children or minors in particular, it's a lot on the parents. So we do have to educate parents, and we have to inform parents a bit more how dangerous this stuff gets. Because mind you, okay, from when your parents are growing up and how you're growing up is 2 very different times. Like, it couldn't be any more different. And so they might not fully understand exactly how it works. Because I know a lot of my family members, they don't have, some don't have social media, or don't fully understand how it works, or don't post a lot. So hell, some of them are still on Facebook, even though Facebook is dead. Okay? So how do you really bridge the gap is really on the educators. And to be honest with you, banning social media is not going to increase social interaction overnight. Okay? That's not really how it works. So I really need to see the study on that whole principles are confirming, because that's not really how it works. Now, if you want stuff like more social interaction, you got to introduce like programs and stuff, but that's a whole rabbit hole for another day. But the point is that I find when it comes to people, or at least governments, want to say, want to protect the kids. Protecting the kids seems more like how far can we push our agenda to do, privacy, or to push people's privacy. And I'm really not in favor of that. I think every individual should have privacy. I know some people need to get some accountability on the internet, but would you rather everybody gets monitored and one individual suffers, or we all suffer? You know what I mean? So, here's what it is. That's just my thoughts about it. Leave a comment if you agree or disagree, or maybe you have a different perspective that I don't know about. Or maybe, hey, hell, if you're Australian and you have a different perspective on this, I would like to hear from you in the comments below. But that being said, like, comment, subscribe, leave a dislike if you want to. But I'm out. Bye.